From teasing a move to the heavyweight division for years to cementing himself as the GOAT there in just under 3 minutes, here's how Jon Jones became the greatest UFC fighter of all time. Starting with, there's no doubt about who's the GOAT after what he did to Ciryl Gane. I mean, is there still something left to debate? In his last few light heavyweight fights, Bones was accused of showing zero interest. It felt like he wasn't motivated at all to fight those guys. He was struggling against opponents who, on another day, he would have finished off with ease. But for the first time in a long time, we saw the best of Jon "Bones" Jones. He was motivated, and he was ready to start this new chapter in his professional MMA career. And boy, what a start it was. All he needed was just 2 minutes and 4 seconds to finish Gane. 2 minutes and 4 seconds to finish one of the highest ranked fighters in the division. Nah, it's just insane. He pushed Gane to the cage and held him tightly in a guillotine choke that he had no choice but to give up. This fight reminded me of his rematch against Alexander Gustafsson in 2018. That was the fight in which we last saw what Jones is capable of and the destructive power he possesses, where it felt like Jon had a point to prove, and now it feels exactly the same after this one. Given what he has achieved in his career and what he did in his first ever heavyweight fight, there's no denying the fact that he's the greatest of all time. I mean, in the end, the fans were left wanting more. Did you know how long Bones teased a move to the heavyweight division? He spent years teasing a move to heavyweight. And this is what we get after waiting 3 years to see him back in action. It's almost unfair. There were actually some people who doubted his move to the division. They thought the heavyweight division was too good for Jones. He ain't gonna make it there. Well, guess what? He came and he conquered the division in only a couple of minutes. All Jon needed were 5 significant strikes to wrap the fight up. Yeah, you heard it right. 5 strikes to win the heavyweight championship. It's crazy. Many people might still rate Georges St-Pierre higher than him, but for me and millions of others, the debate is over. But if he hadn't won the fight quickly, things might have been a little different. Jon would have had to accomplish a bit more to become the undisputed GOAT. Just imagine if it was a decision win for Bones. Would you still consider him the best ahead of St-Pierre? I probably wouldn't. That's how marginal this GOAT debate is. What Georges has achieved in his career is exceptional. Many didn't think that it would be so easy for Jones. In my opinion, even if Jones did win the fight, there still would be some things left for him to achieve in order to be considered the best. You can't just barge into a division like that and become the greatest after just 1 win. You need to do a lot of work to overtake St-Pierre's status. But Bones proved me wrong. The ease with which he finished Gane, I mean, who does that? To drop that kind of performance in your first fight in 3 long years in a completely new division, that was enough to convince people. With that win against Gane, Jones made history. He became the first UFC fighter to have 15 title fight wins on his resume. It was one of the most, if not the most dominating performance of Jones' career. And now, there's only one question left. How much more can Bones extend his legacy before he calls it a day? That's the only thing left to debate about. All Jones now has to do is to put as much distance as he can between himself and all the other contenders for the GOAT status. That's all he needs to focus on now. And I think this is the only reason why he wants Stipe Miocic to be his first title defense. Miocic brings history with himself. He's one of the greatest heavyweight fighters of all time.
He's hurt. He is down. That's it.
And for Jones to defeat him in a title fight would be huge. This is the kind of fight that matters to Bones the most now. And what if he beats Miocic? Which he most certainly will. What then? Will he face Curtis Blaydes and Sergey Pavlovich again? You may not agree with me, but those fights don't have the same historical weight as the Miocic one does. Even if Blaydes and Pavlovich prove to be tougher than Miocic, they still won't be as big opponents as Stipe. Plus, Plus, I don't even think that Jones will stick around long enough to fight either of those guys. He may walk away from the sport sooner than we expect, cause there's nothing left for him to achieve. The only fight apart from Miocic that could have bolstered Jon's GOAT status would have been one against Francis Ngannou, but obviously that can't happen now. And it's not just me who thinks Bones is the GOAT now. UFC's most famous commentator also thinks so. Joe Rogan says Jon Jones is the greatest of all time after his win against Gane. Rogan's someone who's been there from the start. He was a part of the UFC when Jones made his debut in August back in 2008 at UFC 87, and he's still a part of the promotion now that Jones is the heavyweight champ. Rogan's seen his journey, and as one of the most experienced commentators in the sport, when he says something like this, we should just agree with him. Joe was talking about the fight at UFC 285 when he said, Jon Jones is the GOAT. It's undeniable now. Rogan said there was still a debate left before he submitted Gane to win the fight, but not anymore. There you have it. Even more evidence that Bones is the undisputed GOAT of the UFC. So it's clear now, no one can touch him inside the octagon. But some things that have happened outside the octagon might still damage his GOAT status. At least, that's what quite a few UFC fans think. His arrest and PED bust have left a stain on his legacy. Yes, there are still some fans who will never consider him the best, but it's true that his antics outside the octagon have put a dent in his legacy. Like this one time he crashed his 150,000-pound Bentley into a traffic pole after some heavy partying at night. Bones was fined just over $800 for it, and his driving license was also suspended for 6 months. But that's not it. Only 3 years later, the heavyweight champ was involved in a hit-and-run case. He drove past a red light and crashed his car into 2 other vehicles. A pregnant woman was present in one of those vehicles and suffered some serious injuries. Jones fled the scene on foot. It had some serious consequences on his career though. He was stripped of his light heavyweight belt and was also suspended from the promotion. The star avoided a prison sentence for the incident but was given an 18-month probation. Plus, at this point, you are all aware of his multiple failed PED tests. In 2015, he failed his PED test just 1 month before his fight against Daniel Cormier at UFC 182. And ahead of the scheduled rematch in 2016, he failed the test again. So, when you look at these things, you might agree with the people who don't want to consider him the greatest of all time. But as soon as he steps inside the octagon, he's a different beast. That's all from me on how Jones became the GOAT in 3 minutes.